The steakhouse buzzed with Friday night noise, laughter, clinking glasses, sizzling grills. David Collins, a 37-year-old mechanic, sat with his 10-year-old son, Evan, savoring their one shared steak. Then two identical little girls appeared at their table, thin arms clutching each other, eyes fixed on his plate. "Sir, could we maybe have your leftovers?" one whispered. Before David could answer, a woman rushed forward, her hair disheveled, her face pale. And in that moment he froze. It was Isabella Moore. The girl he once loved. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. The steakhouse was alive with end-of-summer noise, waiters rushing between tables, sports highlights flickering on the bar TV, the smell of grilled meat hanging heavy in the air. David Collins sat with his 10-year-old son, Evan, splitting a ribeye they'd agreed to share. Money was tight, but Friday nights were their ritual. Then two small shadows appeared beside their booth. Twin girls, no older than 7, stood silently, their dresses faded, shoes scuffed. One of them clutched the edge of the table, eyes fixed on the plate. "Sir," the braver one whispered, "could we, maybe have your leftovers when you're done?" David's fork froze halfway. Evan blinked at them, stunned. The sight pierced David deeper than he expected. He had grown up with hunger himself, and he knew the sound of it when a child tried to make it polite. Without thinking, he pushed the plate toward them. "You don't need to wait for scraps. Sit down, girls. We'll order something fresh." They hesitated, glancing over their shoulders. That's when David saw her, walking fast, hair messy, eyes hollow from nights without sleep. Isabella Moore. The girl he once loved. The woman who vanished into the glittering world of Jonathan Moore, the feared tech tycoon. She stopped short at the sight of him, color draining from her face. David. His chest tightened. After all these years, fate had brought her back, and she looked nothing like the untouchable heiress he remembered. For a long, brittle moment, Isabella just stood there. The restaurant noise faded under the weight of her silence. The twins sat quickly, as if afraid their mother might change her mind and pull them away. David slid the menu across. "They'll eat first. You too, if you'll let me." Her pride flickered. He still recognized it, the same look she used to give teachers when she refused help. "We can't." "We can," David cut in, voice steady. "Let me do this." The waiter returned, awkwardly eyeing the scene. David ordered extra plates, burgers, fries, milkshakes. Evan grinned, already pushing his crayons across the table for the twins. Within minutes, the children's laughter filled the booth, their hunger louder than their shyness. But Isabella barely touched her water. Her hands trembled against the glass. Finally, David leaned closer. "Why are you here, Isabella?" Her eyes darted toward the door, then back to him. "I left him." The words cracked like dry wood. David's jaw tightened. Jonathan Moore, tech mogul, kingmaker, a man whispered about in every backroom deal, was not the type you left. "You ran," David said quietly. She swallowed hard, eyes glassy. "I had to. He wasn't just cruel to me. He was starting to turn it on them." She nodded at her daughters, who were busy giggling with Evan. "I couldn't let him finish what he started." David's pulse thudded. He remembered Jonathan's shadow reaching into his own life years ago. He thought that wound was buried. But seeing Isabella now, broken and human, he knew nothing was finished. And this dinner was only the beginning. The rain had started by the time they left the steakhouse. Isabella pulled her daughters close, as if the night itself might reach out and take them. David offered to walk them to wherever they were staying. She hesitated, but the twins clung to Evan like they'd known him forever. "We don't have anywhere," Isabella admitted finally, her voice breaking. A shelter was full. We were just going to figure it out. David stared at her, the girl who once lived in mansions, now reduced to this. He didn't need to think. You'll stay with us tonight. Her eyes hardened. David, I won't drag you into this. You don't understand what he'll do. Oh, I do, David said, his voice low. Jonathan Moore ruined more than a few lives. Including mine. She blinked, confused, but he didn't explain. Not yet. Back at his small brick house, the twins curled on the couch with Evan, giggling at cartoons. Isabella stood near the window, arms wrapped tight. For the first time, she looked small. Then a sound made David freeze. A faint hum outside. Too steady to be thunder. He stepped onto the porch, and saw it. A drone hovered just beyond the streetlight, its red eye blinking, watching. His gut clenched. Jonathan knew already. When he returned inside, Isabella had seen it too. Her face was pale, resigned. He doesn't let go, David. He'll come for us. For you. David locked the door and drew the curtains. His voice was steady, even though his hands shook. Then we don't run. We prepare. The house was quiet except for the hum of Evan's video game upstairs and the faint snores of the twins on the couch. David poured 2 mugs of coffee, set one in front of Isabella. She wrapped her hands around it like it might stop her shaking. I thought you were gone for good, David said. Married into a world where I didn't exist. Her eyes glistened. I didn't choose it, David. My father, he pushed me into Jonathan's orbit. He said it was security, a future. She let out a hollow laugh. It was a prison with gold bars. David leaned back, studying her. The Isabella he remembered had been fire and laughter. Now, her voice was gravel. He watched everything, she whispered. Calls, friends, even the girls' schoolwork. When he got angry, she stopped, pressing her lips shut. The money hid it. No one questioned him. David's stomach turned. He'd seen men like Jonathan at the garage, clients who thought they owned the city. But Jonathan was worse, he had power to erase people. He opened his mouth to say more, but Isabella beat him to it. What did you mean earlier? That he ruined your life? David's jaw clenched. Memories he'd buried came clawing back, contracts cancelled overnight, investors backing out, his dream of running a chain of repair shops collapsing without warning. He'd always wondered why. I lost my business because someone pulled strings, David said, his tone rough. Now I think I know who was holding the strings. Isabella's face went pale. She didn't deny it. And that silence told David everything. Morning came heavy, the air still thick with August heat. David walked Evan to school like always, but unease gnawed at him. The drone from last night wasn't there, yet he felt eyes on them. By the time he reached his garage, the first strike had landed. Spray painted across the shutters in dripping red letters, thief. Customers waiting outside whispered, uneasy. One man shook his head. Heard you're running scams, Collins. Overcharging, swapping parts. David's blood boiled. Lies. He opened the shop, forcing calm into his voice, but by noon half his appointments had cancelled. Isabella arrived with the twins just as he was scrubbing the paint from the door. She took one look and whispered, Jonathan. That night, as the kids played in the yard, David's phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. A text lit the screen, back off. She's mine. A photo followed, Evan, walking home from school. David's chest tightened. His son's face, caught by some stranger's lens. He stormed inside, ready to rage, when a man in a gray windbreaker appeared at the porch. Middle-aged, nervous eyes, clutching a worn leather satchel. You don't know me, he said quickly. Name's Mark Delaney. I worked for more technologies. Until I found out too much. He tapped the satchel. Your ex's husband isn't untouchable. I've got files, proof of fraud, surveillance, kickbacks. But he'll kill me if I stand alone. David studied him, heart still pounding from the photo. Jonathan was tightening the noose. And now, a stranger claimed to hold the rope that could pull it off. David let Mark inside reluctantly, never taking his eyes off the satchel. Isabella stayed near the twins, tense as a cornered animal. Mark unzipped the bag and pulled out folders, flash drives, photos. Jonathan's empire isn't just built on tech. He's funneled money through offshore shells, bribed officials, even used private surveillance drones on rivals. The press only sees what he wants them to see. David flipped through papers, internal memos, wire transfers, names of politicians. His gut twisted. And you kept this? Mark gave a humorless laugh. Insurance. But insurance doesn't stop bullets. He already has people following me. I can't take him down alone. Before David could respond, his phone buzzed again. Another message. This one made his blood run cold. Nice garage. Would be a shame if Evan didn't make it home from school tomorrow. David's knuckles whitened on the phone. Isabella covered her mouth, tears brimming. Mark leaned forward urgently. You see now? This isn't just your fight. He'll crush anyone who threatens him. But if we combine what I know with your testimony, what Isabella's seen, he won't escape. The feds will have to listen. David's mind was racing. He wanted to protect Evan, to shield Isabella and the twins. But Jonathan had already crossed the line. He wasn't just fighting for family anymore, he was fighting a man who believed he owned the city. David met Mark's eyes, voice steady. Then we hit him first. The kitchen table was covered in papers, contracts, memos, photos with names scribbled in the margins. Evan and the twins were asleep upstairs, but David couldn't rest. Mark laid out the threads like a man unraveling his own noose. Jonathan has 3 blind spots, Mark explained. Money laundering through a dummy nonprofit, secret surveillance contracts with the city, and, he hesitated, then tapped a folder. A hit arranged on a whistleblower 5 years ago. I can't prove he gave the order, but the timing. David's jaw clenched. So we give all this to the FBI. Mark shook his head. Not yet. They'll bury it if it comes in half-baked. We need to show it's airtight, undeniable. Isabella leaned forward, her voice breaking. Every hour we wait, he watches us. He threatened Evan today. Tomorrow it could be worse. As if summoned by her words, glass shattered in the living room. David bolted up, heart in his throat. A brick lay on the floor, wrapped in duct tape. He unrolled it with shaking hands. For words scrawled in black marker, sons don't live long. The room went silent. Isabella clutched her daughters. Mark swore under his breath. David's rage simmered into something sharper, colder. He met Isabella's terrified eyes. Then he just made this war personal. Mark slid a flash drive across the table. On here is enough to start. If you're serious, we leak it to the right hands tonight. David closed his fist around the drive. He wasn't just fixing cars anymore. He was about to dismantle a tyrant. The house had finally gone quiet again, though the brick still lay on the counter like a curse. David sat with the flash drive in his palm, knuckles white. He wanted to send it out, to burn Jonathan's empire to the ground tonight. But Isabella hadn't moved. She stood by the window, her reflection trembling in the glass. Finally, she spoke, voice low. David, there's something you don't know. He looked up. Her eyes were filled with guilt he hadn't seen before. When Jonathan proposed to me, she said slowly, I refused at first. I still loved you. I thought, maybe I could fight for us. David froze. The words cut deeper than the brick ever could. Her hands twisted in front of her. Jonathan found out. He told me if I didn't marry him, he'd make sure you never stood on your feet again. I thought he meant physically. But then your shop contracts dried up, investors pulled out, banks closed their doors. He sabotaged you, David. Because of me. The world tilted. David remembered those days, dreams collapsing overnight, friends turning cold, the humiliation of losing everything he had built. He had blamed bad luck, his own mistakes. Now, the truth hit like a sledgehammer. You knew, David whispered. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I didn't understand the full extent until it was too late. I thought I was protecting you by giving in. Instead, I helped him destroy you. David turned away, his chest burning. The past he'd carried for years suddenly had a name, a face, and it was the same man threatening his son now. And David Collins was done being silent. The following evening, David stayed late at the garage, tools scattered across the workbench. Mark had gone to deliver a copy of the files to his federal contact. Isabella was upstairs with the kids, trying to pretend bedtime was normal. But David knew tonight wouldn't be. Headlights cut across the bay doors. A convoy of black SUVs rolled in, engines humming like predators. David wiped his hands on a rag, steadying his breath. The first door slammed, and there he was. Jonathan Moore. Polished suit, eyes sharp as glass, flanked by two men with hard jaws and heavier weapons hidden beneath their coats. David Collins, Jonathan said, his voice smooth, poisonous. Still clinging to scraps, I see. Where is she? David stepped forward, meeting him halfway. Not yours to claim anymore. Jonathan's smile thinned. You think this ends with some pathetic files? With a washed-up mechanic and a bitter ex-employee? You've already lost. By tomorrow, every customer you've ever had will believe you're a criminal. And your son. David lunged, fist connecting with Jonathan's jaw. The tycoon staggered back, his mask of control cracking. The bodyguards moved, but headlights flooded the garage again. FBI jackets poured out of unmarked vans, weapons raised, voices commanding. Federal agents. Drop them. Jonathan's smirk faltered as his men were shoved against hoods, wrists cuffed. Mark stepped out from behind the agents, holding a folder aloft. You're done, Moore. We handed them everything. Jonathan's eyes blazed as the cuffs snapped shut. He turned one last venomous glare at David. This isn't over. But for the first time, David felt the weight shift off his chest. Maybe it finally was. The garage was still humming with echoes long after the FBI vans disappeared into the night. The air smelled of oil and gunmetal, but for the first time in years, David could breathe. Isabella came down the stairs slowly, her daughters clinging to her hands. Evan rushed forward, hugging his father's waist. Dad, is it over? David crouched, pressing his forehead against his son's. Yeah, buddy. It's over. Mark lingered in the doorway, exhaustion etched on his face. They'll build a case airtight. Fraud, racketeering, illegal surveillance, the works. Jonathan won't touch daylight for a long time. Isabella's eyes filled, not with fear this time, but something softer. Relief. Gratitude. She looked at David, her voice trembling. I never thought I'd be free of him. You gave me that. You gave my girls a chance. David shook his head. You gave yourself that. I just stood by you. Outside, the city's summer night had cooled, the hum of crickets cutting through silence that was no longer suffocating. The twins dozed on Isabella's lap. Evan leaned against David, eyes heavy but safe. For years, David had lived with an old wound, a life derailed by a man in a tower of glass. Tonight, the truth had been dragged into the open. And though scars remained, they no longer chained him. He looked at Isabella, really looked. The girl he had once lost. The woman who had found her way back. She held his gaze, no words needed. In that quiet moment, David understood, victory wasn't in revenge or even in survival. It was in the simple, fragile chance to build something honest again. And for the first time in years, the silence carried peace. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.